Tēnā tātou katoa. Welcome back to those who regularly tune into Westpac Smarts, and a warm welcome to those joining us for the first time. I'm Kate Gunthorp, a director in the ESG advisory team here at Westpac. The ESG advisory team was established last year for the purpose of supporting Westpac's customers on their journey to a low emissions and climate resilient future. Our topic today is all about navigating the energy transition and how businesses can ensure that they remain resilient. You'll hopefully come away with some really practical information and tips about the kinds of things you can look at in your own business. I'm excited to be joined by three guests to share their knowledge and experience with you. Our panel session is scheduled to run for 45 minutes. The first 30 minutes will be a discussion with the panel, leaving time for audience Q&A at the end. If you've attended a webinar of ours before, you'll know how to register a question for our panel. If this is your first time joining us, there'll be a live Q&A running on the right of your screen, so you can register your questions as they come to mind. And please do indicate which panelist you'd like the question to be asked to. You don't need to wait until the end to ask questions online. And if you like a question that's been raised by someone else, please click on it to increase the rating, and we'll work our way through the highest rated questions first. So, crucial to our discussion today are our three guests joining me, so let's get started by having them introduce themselves. Over to you, Isabelle, and then Patrick and Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm Senior Manager in Product and Propositions in the business team at Genesis. And at the moment, my focus is specifically on decarbonisation and helping our customers move away from gas and switch to electricity. So hopefully I'll share some great insights today, and I hope you'll find them helpful. Over to you, Patrick.
Thank you, Isabelle, and good morning, everyone. I'm Patrick. I'm Senior Manager for Partnerships in the Commercial and Industrial team here at Genesis. So I've been with Genesis for almost 3 years, and a key part of my role is helping our customers decarbonise. I've spent most of my career in the energy and decarb space. I'm a mechanical engineer and chartered engineer. That's me.
Kia ora ko, Mark Handyside toko ingoa. It's great to be on the panel today. I'm a member of the Westpac Sustainable Finance team, and my role is to support our Westpac customers achieve their sustainability goals by aligning their funding with their sustainability strategies.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. Now, as Rod Carr, the outgoing chair of the Climate Change Commission, often says, the transition to a low emissions economy is now well underway in New Zealand and globally, and it's in all of our best interests. And this is particularly true in the energy sector, where a huge pipeline of new renewable generation is planned or currently being built across the country. In addition, as many of our audience will have seen on the news, we had a bit of an energy crunch over winter with higher wholesale gas and electricity prices. So what does this all mean, and what should your business be thinking about in terms of these issues? To answer those questions, I'm going to hand over to Isabelle and Patrick to give a quick energy sector market update before we kick into the panel Q&A part of our session. So over to you, Isabelle.
Thank you. So I'm going to walk you through, as Kate mentioned, the reasons for the volatility we experienced in the sector this winter. So broadly, it's due to two key factors, one which is natural gas and the other one which is hydro. So in terms of the gas, in New Zealand, we've seen a decline in the gas reserves since about 2020. And this year specifically, in the second quarter, we were down roughly about 28% year on year. So as you will see on the bottom left-hand side of the screen there, we have a graph which shows the top 5 major gas fields in New Zealand, and you can clearly see there the ongoing steady decline. We have explored gas to try and find more, but unfortunately, we haven't been successful. And so what that means is with less gas, there's less reliable supply of gas for electricity generation. So for those of you who may not know, one of the ways we generate electricity is by using gas. And in winter, obviously, that's a problem because this winter in particular, we had less gas, and winter being cold, many homes and businesses often use gas to warm themselves up. So the demand for gas is quite high. So that was one of the factors. The other one is water. So in New Zealand, about 60% of our electricity generation is through hydro. And as luck would have it, this year we had what we call a dry year. We had low rainfall, so much so that we were actually 50% down on a typical year. So as you can see there, with the two combined, we had quite a shortage. So what that means is then we have to burn coal to make up for that shortfall. Obviously, that's not ideal because, first of all, as we all know, that's not great for the environment, but also it's a more expensive way to produce electricity to keep the lights on. So with all that said, you're probably wondering what we're doing about it moving into the future. So I'm going to hand you over to Patrick, who's going to talk to our renewables pipeline.
Thank you, Isabelle. So the good news is there are lots of new build renewables in the pipeline. And crucially, what it means is that more energy is coming into the grid. Interestingly, the bulk of this new generation is coming from solar. And here at Genesis, we're playing our part. At the end of this year, we'll be commissioning Lauriston, which is a 47 megawatt peak plant, and that will provide enough renewable energy to power approximately 13,000 homes. And we've also got a recent acquisition of a much larger generation opportunity over in Edgecombe, and all going well, that opportunity will kick off it will be commissioned in 2028. It's relevant to touch on a couple of challenges we have with renewables. The key one is they are intermittent, which means energy isn't always available when we want it. Another challenge we have is the length of time to complete a project. Quite a long time spent with consenting, also with connecting onto the grid. Next slide, please. So to help businesses understand and manage energy choices, I thought it might be helpful to introduce the energy trilemma framework. So it has three key components, being energy security, environment, and price. And the key concept here is it's really hard to have an energy which achieves all three components well, and so often it's a trade-off. And so as a business owner, it's really important to understand, of those three components, which ones are your priorities, and then choose your energy accordingly. So for me for now. Back to you, Kate.
Thanks, Patrick and Isabelle. So just to kind of reframe that briefly, the supply outlook for gas, it remains challenged. There was an MB article a little while ago saying that, supply is likely to be lower than demand for the next 2 to 3 years. To counter that, we've got a lot of renewables development coming online, but we do have this slightly tricky period in energy markets, probably for the next 2 to 3 years while everything starts to come online. And so then, Patrick, there's a lot of jargon in this space. We've already heard a few of the words, lots of long words ending in TION. From your perspective, could you just explain the difference between electrification and decarbonisation?
Sure. So decarb is all about reducing carbon footprint. So it's the process of switching away from a carbon-intensive energy like coal or gas and moving to a low-carbon alternative like electricity or biomass. Whereas electrification is broader. It includes electrifying at the consumer end with items like heat pumps and EVs, but crucially, it also includes building new renewable electricity generation, which is required to power all of those heat pumps and EVs. Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Patrick. So for our audience, the concepts aren't mutually exclusive. Anyone will have machines in their business that will probably use fossil fuels, and they can decarbonise those machines. And electrification is one of the options to decarbonise, but then you've also potentially got other options for some businesses like biomass. So Isabelle, turning to you, in the introduction, you discussed the outlook for the gas market in New Zealand. And many of our businesses and households use gas, either reticulated gas or natural gas. So what should businesses be thinking about given the outlook you described?
Yes, that's right. So I think given the decline and the likely uncertainty into future supplies, it's probably really important now for businesses to start thinking about decarbonising. So typically that would start with a site audit of the premises, and that would allow us to understand the business consumption. From there, we would also evaluate which equipment is nearing its end of life. So that's a really important point for businesses to note today, that if you have any equipment nearing end of life, we really need to help you come up with a plan to start thinking about the electric equivalent replacement. And then if budget allows, of course, it might be prudent to replace all gas equipment. So we're working with our industry partners that we've selected carefully. They specialize in all these areas, and we facilitate site audits, tailored recommendations, assistance building business cases. They'll manage the projects end to end, and sourcing of the equipment, obviously. So what we're hoping by facilitating all of this through our partners is to really help businesses come up with the solution end to end, take the stress out of the whole thing so that you can continue to focus on your business and not worry about any of this. So that's really the way to go.
That's great. Thanks, Isabelle. And I love how Genesis is changing up your business model a little bit to move from this kind of energy provider through to more energy advisory. That's really helpful. So Patrick, when we're talking about decarbonisation, what are the kinds of assets that we're talking about? What kinds of things will be in someone's business or home that tend to use gas?
Cool. So for homes, typical gas appliances include things like space heaters, hot water heaters, and cookstops. For businesses, it's a lot broader, but common applications are things like boilers, air heaters, and furnaces. Back to you, Kate.
Great, thanks. And I, on a personal level, have been on a bit of this journey myself at home. So over the course of the last 18 months or so, we've been through a process of, we started by putting in an HRV system, and then we replaced our gas hob with an induction hob. And then we went through the process of installing a hot water heat pump. And I'm very happy to say that actually our total energy usage has actually decreased now that we've replaced all of the gas appliances at home. So that's quite cool. And Patrick, what kinds of options are available for businesses looking to switch from gas to something else? And where can they go to get more advice and information?
Yep. So typical options include heat pumps, which are great for space heating and hot water heating. Other options include things like biomass boilers and electric boilers, which are great for producing steam. Fundamentally, though, the most appropriate option is specific to a customer need. A great place to start for info is EECA. So EECA are the Energy Efficiency Conservation Authority. They have lots of really helpful info online. I'd also encourage you to reach out to us here at Genesis. We have dedicated business account managers, and it is their job to help customers understand energy options and ultimately help them execute decarb projects. Back to you, Kate.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And as I'm sure everyone online has experience with businesses are struggling with costs at the moment. And so how much would a typical project cost be to replace gas assets and systems?
Unfortunately, there's no one go-to typical cost because the cost is hugely dependent on things like the technology type. But to give some perspective in typical cost, at the larger industrial end of town, we recently helped a customer install a 1 megawatt electric heat pump, and that had a project cost of around 2 million. At the much larger scale, Fonterra recently built a biomass boiler at their Waitoa plant. That was a 30 megawatt boiler with a total project cost of around 90 million. So, Isabelle, do you have any insights into typical cost in the SME space?
Yes, I do. So I've got a couple of examples here with me. Obviously, the small and medium segment is really broad and varied. So same as Patrick, it's really difficult to give you a typical cost. But as an example, if you're a hotel and you're wanting to switch out your boiler, you're probably looking at anything between 30 to 95,000. A hot water cylinder might be more around the 30,000 mark. If you're a restaurant and you want to swap out your stove and your oven, you probably could look at something around the 20,000 mark for each item. There's a number of laundries out there, commercial laundries. So if you want to replace your dryers, you're probably looking at anything between 30 to 95,000. So those are just really broad examples, obviously really dependent on the industry and the equipment type.
Great, thank you. So there is some upfront cost involved, but I think it's quite important that we start to reframe this as an investment, especially for those key decision points like end of life, or if you're building a new facility or redeveloping a facility. And I guess the other point is when you're weighing that up, you're really thinking about if you replace like for like with your gas systems, you know, what does that security of supply look like going forwards and for your business, you know, and how much of a risk is that? So all of those things we've got to take into account. And on that point, in terms of creating business cases for investment in these long-term assets, Isabelle, what can you share about what might help businesses to develop those business cases?
Yeah, so we are definitely here to help with our partners because I think we all know how daunting creating a business case is. So we can provide valuable data to help businesses. So that would include things like current gas consumption, future estimated electricity consumption, obviously the cost of the equipment we've just discussed, and the overall cost of the project. And then we would overlay that with an appropriate commercial offer specific to the business needs. So that's one component. The other side to think about when crafting the business case is actually the security of supply. And so businesses really need to evaluate how dependent they are on gas to maintain their operations. So that's a very important point. And the other important point as well to think about is the future of gas prices. So obviously we don't know what the future holds, but potentially things will likely to continue to be a challenge. So that also needs to be taken into account. So I think by putting all those elements together and taking them into account, we can help businesses create quite a robust business case and obviously make sure businesses have a resilient plan to switch away from gas and over to electricity.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Isabelle. And Mark, bringing you into the conversation now as well, because I know through the work that you've done with the sustainable finance team, you see a lot of this going on with our customers. So is there anything that you'd add in terms of what you've seen about how our customers have helped to make these business cases stack up?
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Look, we've observed a really growing demand from our customers for sustainable energy solutions. that not only improve their environmental impact, but also shore up their supply and reduce operational costs and boost their cash flow. Look, for new assets, choosing electric over fossil fuel options is usually a clear and reasonably compelling decision. However, reducing existing assets can be a lot more complex, especially if they're halfway through an asset's life cycle. It's important to have a solid asset management plan and to consider future operating costs for fossil fuel assets, because these may be quite a lot higher than past expenses. Additionally, it's important to be aware of the steps involved in transitioning to electric assets so that you can be fully aware of the total cost of ownership. One customer we're currently working with was really struggling with the economics of converting their gas-based heating system to electricity. However, when they added an integrated solar solution, the payback period improved considerably, which really strengthened the business case for them. Patrick's already mentioned this, but it's worth mentioning again. If you're not sure where to start, EECA, which is the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Authority, offers some really excellent resources that a lot of our customers have found really, really valuable. You'll find helpful information such as data tools, insights, and case studies, which can really support your decision making.
Thanks, Mark. And I think that total cost of ownership is a really key kind of construct to be thinking about. I know Rewiring Aotearoa have done a lot of good work in the space and for households, where they're basically saying now that New Zealand, for the average household, has reached this electrification tipping point where if you switch from your fossil assets to electrified assets all across your household, then you're basically swapping your energy costs for finance costs, even if you finance those upfront at an interest rate, and that you're actually better off under the electrified scenario. So Mark, from Westpac's perspective, how important is all of this energy transition stuff? And, how are we thinking about our customers' energy use when we're making decisions?
Yeah, great question. Look, as a bank, we're focused on factors like cash flow, operating expenses, and overall financial health when we're assessing a business's credit worthiness. So we're invested in the long-term success of our customers. That means supporting their financial resilience. We're also seeing a shift in how energy use plays a role in banking. So in the past, energy wasn't always a key consideration for our bankers. But as we move from traditional energy systems and face less certainty around energy prices, energy efficiency and sustainability will become increasingly important in how we assess businesses' financial outlook. For some customers, their energy sourcing costs will make all the difference between whether they're a viable business in the future or not. Banks are also increasingly focused on our Scope 3 emissions, which are the emissions from our customers. And look, we're committed to helping our customers, especially those reliant on fossil fuels, make this important transition. We engage directly with our largest customers and offer sustainable lending products to support all our customers in their shift towards sustainability.
Great, thanks, Mark. So we've heard about some of the support that's available from Genesis. We've heard about, the need to transition and some information on how to start to think about creating a business case for this kind of investment. From a financing perspective, what kinds of options are available for businesses looking for finance, and including at home, because we know, a lot of our SME customers run an office from their home.
Yeah. Look, at Westpac, we offer a variety of sustainable finance options to help our customers. And these include our sustainable business loan, which is available for our larger business customers with facilities over $1 million. This loan makes it easier to invest in sustainable initiatives, whether it's reducing environmental impact, adapting to climate change, and actually it's broader than just environment. It also includes social causes in your community. Secondly, we've got a sustainable equipment finance loan, which is available to all business customers of Westpac. This loan helps fund sustainable equipment like energy efficient machinery and zero emission vehicles to power your operations. And thirdly, we have for our home business customers who own their homes, we have the Westpac Greater Choices Home Loan, which you can use to help create a warmer, drier, and more energy efficient home. Look, all of these come with discounted borrowing rates to make becoming environmentally friendly more affordable. If you're interested in any of those offerings, please either visit our website or reach out via your usual channels, whether that be your relationship manager or one of our business specialists in our contact centre.
Thanks, Mark. And Isabelle, moving back to you now, what about solar and batteries? Is it important to do both? So replace your gas assets as well as installing solar and batteries? I know that's not necessarily possible for every business. If you do one or the other, will you still see some benefits?
Yes, that's right, you would. So solar and battery can make a lot of sense for some businesses, as you say, and that usually is uncovered during the audit I referred to earlier. So generally, we would assess things like the condition of the roof or the sun exposure. You'd also need to think about whether your landlord would potentially allow you to have solar. So there's a number of things to take into account. And so it might not always be viable. Certainly, if it is viable, it's absolutely worthwhile investigating because, like we just mentioned, it can be very beneficial. But if it is not viable, that's still perfectly fine, and you still can get on with decarbonising your gas equipment, and there's nothing there that should stop you. It would still work just as well.
Great, thank you. So I've got one more closing question for everyone before we move on to the audience Q&A. We've got a number of Westpac large corporate and business customers on the line. What is one piece of advice that you would give to them, or one thing that you'd like businesses to know about energy today and in the future? Patrick, could you go first?
Sure. Key thing I would do, definitely be proactive in managing gas. So have a look at your contract, know when it expires, and also start looking at options to move away from gas. And again, Genesis is really keen to help you do this. Isabelle.
Right. So I think, yes, for me, that's the key takeaway today. If you've listened to this and you're thinking, oh gosh, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, don't know where to start, we're certainly here to help. So that's the first thing you should know. Please contact us. And then probably the first thing to do would get an audit underway to help you understand where you can start making that move over to electricity and reduce the risk to your business. Mark?
Fantastic. And look, from a financing perspective, my advice is to start a conversation with your banker about your current energy solutions and the options you're considering for the future. At Westpac, we're here to support you by providing the funding solutions that can help you optimize your business.
Great, thank you. Okay, so that concludes our formal part of the panel session. So we will move into some audience Q&A. Let me just see what is coming up in the Q&A. So a reminder to pop on to the Q&A and ask your question if you haven't already. And then please do like other people's questions if there's something that you do want to see answered. So we've got a question from Glenn. Essentially, has there been analysis done on the electricity generation side now and into the future? So if all of the industrial customers move away from existing fossil fuel energy requirements and decarbonise, have we worked out whether we'll have enough electricity? And I'll just give a slight answer, and then if anyone wants to chip in, please do. I guess the New Zealand energy market at the moment is very much demand side led. So what the energy generators are doing at the moment is they're looking for those demand signals. So that the more and the earlier we get those demand signals that the large industrial customers are going to decarbonise and they've got public plans in place, then that gives the generators the certainty to be able to start building out more and more renewable development. There's certainly a huge amount of renewable development that's sitting in the Transpower queue at the moment. And that's at various stages, and some will be waiting for FID decisions, and some of that will be based on demand signals. Patrick and Isabelle, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yes.
Isabelle, after you.
Yeah, I was going to say, so yes, I do tend to agree. And as Patrick alluded to earlier, there is a lot in the renewables pipeline coming through. So I think we'll be fine. At some point, we'll tip the scales and we'll be on our way to having enough renewables energy.
Great, thank you. And then a question here on upfront capital costs. So we may not be able to give you exact figures, but I can probably give you my personal circumstances. So what's the upfront capital costs to move away from gas to electric for a regular 5-bedroom home in Auckland as compared to the monthly savings in electricity gas bills? So just my personal experience, and this isn't a Westpac recommendation or anything, but we found that at home, it was around $3,000 to install an induction hob, and then it was around $10,000 to install a hot water heat pump. We've got a 4-bedroom home, by the way, so slightly comparable. We've got a slightly tricky house in that we had some underfloor hot water heating, so we had to get a sort of separate tank installed for that, which made it a little bit more complicated and a bit more expensive. But the research that Rewiring Aotearoa have done suggests that it's about $20,000 for the average New Zealand home to convert their gas assets over. And I've been tracking my savings. I don't want to release those until I've done 12 months worth, but I can say that the overall energy usage is less, just my personal perspective. Anyone else want to jump in on that?
I think you've covered it.
Oh, thank you. Okay, now question on security of supply. We know that natural gas is going to continue to play an important role until we change over to other sources of electricity. So do you want to talk, Patrick or Isabelle, a little bit around, the different things in the New Zealand energy system that natural gas is used for, so electricity generation versus the other things, and what are kind of some of the options? So just to expand that a little bit, in the electricity generation side, for example, I understand we're going to need natural gas around for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think a key part is we currently don't have enough renewables to switch off from coal or gas. But as we build more renewables, it will make switching off those older assets more viable. Yeah. Isabelle, anything beyond that?
No, I mean, I think that's the key, that as an industry, we are building more renewables, which will help us. I think you did mention something about what is gas used for. So probably looking at heating, hot water heating, cooking. I mean, there's all sorts of usages. There's a lot of businesses that use gas for manufacturing. The other day I found out a business I was talking to use gas for carpet manufacturing, part of their process. So it's used for all sorts of things. So I think the sooner we can help businesses move away from gas, the better. And then potentially, if some businesses are struggling to come off gas, that means they'll get the gas left over at the end until such a time that another solution turns up.
Yeah, because we've only got sort of a finite amount of natural gas left in, to supply. And in terms of, how that gets used, for some of the household applications and some of the small business applications, there's already kind of mature technology that exists that businesses can swap out for, versus an electricity generation. It doesn't seem like we're going to get to a point where we can completely eliminate using gas in electricity generation until, sometime when we've got a whole range of other solutions like grid scale batteries and, much greater flexibility and things like that.
Yeah.
So question here from Glenn. We use natural gas for steam generation and would be keen to move to an electric solution. However, the existing infrastructure to enable a switch, there isn't existing infrastructure to enable a switch to electricity. What channels are available to assist with this? And Glenn, I assume you mean there the electricity infrastructure. So perhaps that's a challenge around, local capacity issues. Isabelle and Patrick, do you have any views on that?
Yeah, that's right. So there will be times when potentially you'd want to switch, and the local network may need to work through some upgrade before that's possible. So generally, I mean, we can help with that. We'll work with our partners and with the local networks to make sure that that can happen. But obviously, there'll be a queue, if you like, of upgrades needing to happen. So that will take time. But if that's something you want to do, my advice would be to register your interest and make sure you've contacted us so we can do that on your behalf if needed.
Yeah, I think the key thing is reaching out to your lines company early on. Yep.
Great, thank you. And I understand all of the electricity distribution companies are doing a lot of work in this space, and the Electricity Authority is sort of working on the process of, connection requests and if there are local upgrades that need to be done. So there is work going on in that space to try and streamline that process, because I know that can be a bit of a challenge for some businesses. And I think the other thing that's important there is if you say if you're in an industrial estate and you've got other businesses around you who may be looking to decarbonise at some point, it's probably worth having a chat to some of your neighbours, because if you can kind of club together to fund some of those upfront costs related to the electrical capacity, then that could help to make the whole process a bit cheaper. Okay, so other questions from the chat. I've got a question around renewable gases, and for people who love the benefits of gas, will renewable gases be an option for some people to use as a form of energy in the future? Open the floor to that one.
Yep, I can have a crack. The short answer is currently we just don't have enough supply. There is a new plant that was recently built out in Roa, but really it's a small scale plant, and it will take time to scale it. It's crystal ball gazing, so hard to really understand what the future of biogas looks like. But at this stage, it's likely we just won't have enough of it to really move all of our natural gas users over onto biogas.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well, is that biogas is likely to play a role for some customers, but it's probably, or some businesses, but it's probably also going to be, a local thing as well. So if you've got, local creation of biogases that you can then use in your own business versus, the entire kind of gas pipeline and gas networks being pumped with biogas. Okay, this is a question that's probably always going to come up. Do you think the previous government's prior ban on offshore oil and gas exploration affected the energy trilemma?
Tough question, and again, really difficult to answer that with any firm groundings. What I would say is, regardless of the ban, we would still have our current issue of we ran out of gas in the ground quicker than what we anticipated. So my opinion is it may not have helped, but it definitely isn't the root cause, no.
Yeah, and the other thing I would add to that is that there has been, efforts to explore, and we came up short every time. So I think even if it had continued, there would have been not necessarily any guarantees that we would have found any. So as Patrick said, we don't know whether it's contributed, but, even if we went full tilt today exploring, we may not find any gas.
Yeah, there's public reporting on the amount of money that's been spent across the different gas exploration sites, and it's something like $2 billion over the last 5 years. And despite that investment, ongoing investment, there's not been a huge additional amount of gas found. I think this seems to be a bit of a global challenge. And I know while New Zealand's gas market is quite unique, what we are seeing across the ditch in Australia is that they seem to be having similar challenges around their gas fields as well.
Mm.
So moving on, a question here that says, will the energy efficiency reduced rates be offered to business customers needing to make these changes? Mark, that's probably one for you.
Yes. So look, we have sustainable solutions available to all of our business customers now. So in short, yes, there will be some form of sustainable finance offering which will be offered at a reduced rate, available to all of our business customers.
Great, thank you. Earlier, I saw a question on Slido which I can't now find from a childcare centre, so apologies for that. I think it said something about they want to invest in solar. There was a cost that they'd given, and they said, how can Genesis help us with this? So Isabelle, do you want to sort of talk about some of the practical things that you could do to support customers?
Yes, so certainly, as I referred to earlier, we could ask our partners to do a site audit and understand the viability of it. And then if it turns out that it is a solution, then we would look to check the commercials with the customer and see what we could offer in terms of buyback or in terms of a longer term plan if needed. So we can absolutely do that.
Great, thank you. And who should that person reach out to? Will they know who their Genesis Energy person is or who they could contact?
Yeah, so they may have an account manager that they can reach out to. If they don't know who that is, they can contact us. I think our number is on our website, and or there's an email address, but there should be a number they can contact us on. Or feel free to contact me, and I'll put you in touch with the right people.
Thank you. That's brilliant. We've got a good question here, which often comes up when I'm talking to people about the whole gas transition issue. It says some of the residential households are still unaware of the transition to natural gas and haven't received correspondence from their suppliers. How are providers going to act on these challenging conversations? So I think this is really all about, awareness within, the business community and across households, and what are we sort of going to do to help alleviate some of those issues?
Yeah, I can help answer that if you like. So we work closely with the building industry because often we have builders who build new households, and obviously at times we'll install gas. So we have discussions with them, and we have explained the gas supply issue. So hopefully the trend will be that less new households will be built with gas moving forward. That's one of the things. And then more broadly for people who already have gas, we're going to have more educational pieces going out as well to our customer base to explain the situation and to provide guidance and advice in terms of what we should be doing next.
Great, thank you. And there's a question here about grant opportunities, and I'm not sure if anyone on the panel is aware of how this works, but is there anything available in the grant space for people looking to transition?
My understanding is ECA is still providing grants to help customers identify opportunities. So things like decarb roadmaps and energy audits. The GIDI funding was pulled last year, so I don't believe the grants are currently there for capital projects, but I think they are there for those audits and roadmaps.
Thank you. And I think we've probably just got time for one more quick question. So a good question here from Nilesh. An individual homeowner spending $20,000 to get a saving of, say, $50 a month doesn't feel financially attractive, so most will stay on gas at home. Any thoughts on this? I might just take that one sort of from a personal perspective. I guess the way that we have been looking at this at home is we're treating it as a bit of an electrification journey. And so the first step for us has been to electrify our gas assets. And then the next step that we're going to do, hopefully early next year, is install solar panels and a battery at home. And so that is where we suddenly see huge financial benefits, or, much, much lower operating costs. So we're, based on our system requirements, we'll probably have a system in place that covers a large portion of our electricity bill. And so that's where we suddenly see that we are actually saving, a lot of money month by month. And when you look at financing some of that upfront cost at a very low, or for Westpac customers on the Greater Choices home loan top-up, the rate is 0% for several years. So then it becomes a really attractive financial proposition if you can finance the upfront cost at a low or no interest rate, and then you get the benefit of having those reduced monthly household costs. So that is all we've got time for today. I wanted to say thank you very much to the panel. Your insights have been very useful, and hopefully lots of practical things for businesses to think about. So thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who joined online and who submitted a question for the panel. We've really appreciated the discussion. We will be providing a recording of this webinar to you after the event. And you'll see there's a survey poll to the right of the webinar. If you'd like to leave a rating, we'd love the feedback. And this is also an opportunity for you to share any topics that you'd like us to discuss in future. So please do keep an eye out for future Westpac Smarts webinars. Ngā mihi nui, ka kite anō.